earlier on, when we're heading to that commercial break, lives have been lost, others injured, still in hospital. Of course, as you are saying, they'll start a fund drive to help the families that have been affected. Property is destroyed. But why are you still calling for maandamano, yet you are seeing the negative effect on Kenyans?
First of all, I want to assure Kenyans that demonstrations and peaceful demonstrations are guaranteed in the Constitution, Article 37. They are also guaranteed as part of human rights in many parts of the world and the UN Charter. And therefore, that's something you cannot stop. And there are demonstrations all over the world. You cannot come and suspend Article 37 or suspend the Constitution of Kenya and give a decree that there will be no maandamano. In fact, the idea of notice to police, that was overtaken by the 2010 Constitution. There are quite a number of statutes which have not been amended to rhyme with the new Constitution. There are also regulations, expired regulations under Public Order Act. The last ones were made by the year 2000 when Amos Wako was Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya. And therefore, after they expired in 10 years, which is a requirement of the law by Statutory Instruments Act, they were never renewed by the Honorable Kindiki. And as a lawyer, I believe, instead of now passing roadside declarations or issuing unconstitutional orders, they should put regulations as to how peaceful demonstrations are conducted. And the practice all over the world and the law as it exists today, every demonstration is allowed. But then if it turns to be chaotic, first and foremost, an officer, a rank of inspector, gives a declaration, loud and clear, and requests the people to disperse. 15 minutes later, then, you could now say the meeting is illegal. So all the meetings which have taken place are legal, and the police have not followed the law. The government has been very hard on the police. The police force has now been politicized. It's no longer a service because it's supposed to serve the people. And I want to give Kenyans two examples where there has been huge meetings and then nobody died and nothing was stolen. The first time when Raila Odinga was sworn as the people's president, the police did not interfere with the people, and they did not fire any tear gas, they did not interrupt anybody. They're the ones who have been provoking peaceful people, following instructions from the government, having taken sides in terms of politics of the country. And therefore, at that particular moment, no one was killed. The other day, when Honorable Raila Odinga came to town by bus and had his shoes brushed, and many people came to greet him, there was a very huge meeting in town. The police did not come to disrupt it. Nobody's thing was stolen, and everybody went home peacefully. If the police had come there, started firing tear gas and started shooting people, then of course people will react, and property is likely to be damaged.
So for you, you're blaming the National Police Service?
Yes, I'm blaming.
All right.
It is not really the National Police Service. The National Police Service is now totally under entire control of the presidency.
So why is, before I come to the DG, Senator, in a minute, why is it that what is coming out to the public is a section of Kenyans are questioning the exact reason as to why the Azimio team is asking Kenyans to go on the streets? Because it's now moved from IEBC, open the server. Now the focus is on the common unifying factor between the opposition and Kenyans is the high cost of living.
Priority was always high cost of living. The rest of the things are pending issues which should be dealt with once the cost of living is brought down. And the government knows that it can bring the cost of living down. The problem has been a political context, whereby, and unfortunately now there is hatred between wananchi and the police. That should never been. The police service, now turned back to force, should always be friendly to wananchi because it's supposed to serve wananchi. No single Kenyan should have died by a bullet of the police. Although police have also been injured, they're the ones who started the fight by firing tear gas and by showing hostility to peaceful Kenyans and by being very aggressive unnecessarily. So I must say the hostility has originated from police, and the police force is being misused. And I'm sure the police officers don't like it. So way forward, one of the things we must agree, there must be peaceful demonstrations in the country. And I can assure you, if the police never interfered at all, nobody's thing would have ever been stolen. And when demonstrations are going on, they're supposed to be marshals. And I have been in some of these huge meetings before, even political meetings, very charged ones. But the the Kenyans themselves ensure that no other Kenyan has been robbed.
All right. So DG, so here we are having this discussion. It's not to say who's right, who's wrong, but there's that call for truth. And this call for truth is what even the Azimio side is questioning, how the president called, and not really called, but said, okay, I'm extending an olive branch, let's have a conversation. So even that process, does it matter on how it is called for?
No, I think we will be avoiding the reality if we just go into niceties, diplomatic. I mean, the niceties of who calls for or what media was used. I think the gist of the matter is that we have a problem, and this problem cannot be solved through demonstrations. Demonstrations will only lead to more destruction and economic depression in this country. Yes, peaceful demonstrations are enshrined in the Constitution as per Article 37, but there is a rider to it that these demonstrations must be peaceful and protesters must be unarmed. Now, how to verify that now, especially when there are accusations of gun hire and all this kind of, all manner of accusations flying here and there, it's a difficult position to be in. So the point is, and I stress on this, underline this, that it is not really how the truth was called for. It is the need to go and sit and dialogue, because you can't solve economic issues through the streets. You can't solve or iron out this issue of hikes in prices through demonstrations. These are economic issues. Economic issues can be solved through macroeconomic policies, fiscal discipline, investments in infrastructure and the social welfare and this kind of a thing. So, Azimio and team, it's important that both sides of the divide, both Azimio and KK Alliance, sit and dialogue.
So who is fooling who between? Who's fooling Kenyans between the Azimio team and the Kenya Kwanza team, from where you sit?
I think it's political expediency. These are matters of ego now. It's no longer price hikes. It's no longer about cost of living, in my view. Because if it was the case, then demonstrations only bring out the problem. They create awareness. Mm-hmm. The awareness has been created. Now what next? Do you go back to the streets? No, that's not the solution. Now the solution is we go and sit and dialogue. What are the issues? Price hikes.
But DG, before I bring in a minute, as I bring in Dr. Mogesa, awareness has been created. You agree? Kenyans have made that awareness to the government, even through that public participation that was done before the Finance Act 2023 was passed, through public barazas saying that we do not support some sections of this bill. But they went ahead and passed it. They passed the message to the government. The government didn't hear. They're using demonstrations. Looks like the government is not hearing. So then what's next? That is the question that Kenyans are asking.
You see, let's get it right. The finance bill was one of the contentious issues. Understandably, yes. This government is in a fix. Doomed if they do, doomed if they don't. We are already in some, you understand the national debt and all this kind of mess we are in. And you know, the nature of democracy is that the winner takes in our country, for example, it's the winner takes all. Whatever means they used to pass that bill, it's a fact that that bill was passed. But there are huge reservations by Kenyans and by the Azimio divide.
All right.
That is a fact. But now how do you solve it? We have created this awareness, yes. Now it's a fact that the awareness has been created. Now we go back to the table again and we resume those talks.
All right.
And this, one of the contentious issues, the finance bill, definitely.
All right.
Kenyans, of course, cannot, it's a fact that taxation is high in the country, and many other factors are there. This increases the cost of living in one way or another.
All right.
But now again, on the flip side, how will the government solve the mess they're in?
All right. So, Dr. Mogesa, when it comes to justice that the human rights and IPOA are trying to get for Kenyans who are injured and the families who lost their brothers and sisters and their children, how will they be able to identify that specific security officer who lobbied a tear gas canister that hurt that young boy in Mathare, that bullet that killed a 13-year-old boy in the Western region, and the young person, the gentleman in Imali?
First of all, the Public Order Management Act is very clear on the command responsibilities. For instance, the OCS or the OCPD must know the officers they have deployed in a particular area. Such that then when we have issues like what we are facing right now in terms of the injuries, in terms of the killings through the gun, the OCS, the OCPD of that region must know the number of officers who are deployed in a particular area. Then their firearms are also documented, right? At the end of the day, they should also account, for example, how many bullets were used. So out of this, we would be able to know that Officer X was given this number of ammunition and these are the number that were used.
Will there be transparency during that audit process?
That is what is supposed to be done. But many times we realize that even when we question command responsibilities, and even as a commission, I know we have taken, matters to court on matters of command responsibilities to establish, culpability of certain actions of our officers. That is how it is supposed, to be done. In the end, it is the police who are supposed to guard the Kenyans. Even those who die under whatever circumstances, they must be documented. And those that were, shot and killed, also accountability must be there. We must know which guns were used, the bullets that were used, so that we establish and ensure that these victims and their families actually get justice.
So what if, I'm not trying to be the devil's advocate here, but what if maybe it just happens that you're not able to identify the bullet that was used, the gun that was used, the police officer that lobbed that tear gas canister, the police officer that fired that bullet? What happens? How will the victim get justice?
We can use other sources of evidence. For instance, we have seen, through social media, some images of specific officers, for example, throwing, gas canisters on the citizens, or even others, shooting that 13-year-old. Why don't we reconstruct the image of that officer who was involved, and then the police investigate, IPOA investigates, so that that 13-year-old who died gets justice.
All right. And Senator, why is it such a big deal? Why is the opposition making haubalu about the way the president reached out to Azimio leader?
First and foremost, there are structures as to engagement. Most of these matters are parliamentary statutes, and there was the Honorable Murangara team and the Omolo Otiende team. Now, the same teams, first of all, can be activated because they had already been disbanded. They can be reorganized to look at the sections of the law so that they can advise. The manner of using a tweet is ridiculous. We saw this with Donald Trump. We used to communicate with the tweets. Government communicates officially if it really wants to communicate, because it's a government of the people. And we no longer have rulers, we have leaders. And the leadership is about leading the people to a better destiny, not into destruction. So I think, to be very honest, several mistakes have been made by the current government, and there has been warmongers on part of the government. There are statements made by a leader of majority in National Assembly, the member for Kikuyu, Honorable Ishungwa. There are statements, very nasty statements made by the Minister for Trade, the Honorable Moses Kuria, who has been a member of Parliament and is a militant politician, very well known. So some of these statements have irritated the public. And there has been lack of goodwill on the part of government. There has been lack of goodwill on the part of police, such that the opposition feels mistreated.
So as much as you're saying the opposition feels mistreated, so who invited the president of Tanzania?
Ordinarily, a matter of two heads of states, and it should not just be denied casually. It means for a head of state to come to Kenya, even on an emergency basis, there must be, authorization by the state, the head of state here. So when it's a matter of serious diplomatic practice, and it is international. And I believe for head of state of Tanzania to come here, or for President Ruto to visit Tanzania, head of state, there must be even phone calls and prior arrangements diplomatically. So there's no way a head of state can just show up in a country. It cannot happen. So if the head of state was here, she was invited officially by the head of state of Kenya, and when he visited Tanzania, it's the same. And Kenya and Tanzania have very good diplomatic relations. We should not really spoil them through our politics. But the activities happening in Kenya are concerning the whole world. The whole world is concerned with the police brutality, with the abuse of human rights in this country, high-handedness in terms of leadership, and most important, the fraud in parliament. You cannot have a fraudulent statute and impose it on the people.
Right.
The people have a right to talk, express themselves, and communicate to the government so that to express their displeasure.
All right.
That is the import of Article 7
All
of
right.
the Constitution.
And gentlemen, we are beginning to wind up, so I'll give you a minute each. DG, the involvement of the former president, he's come out to say, I have not supported, in terms of, I've not funded any demonstrations. We are seeing security of his mother withdrawn, security of his children withdrawn. And we are seeing back and forth of words from some of the leaders associated to the president towards the former president. This is the former head of state, not just any other person.
Well, it's a fact that the former president, President Uhuru Kenyatta, supported Azimio presidential candidate Raila Odinga as his preferred candidate. But it's a fact that he also handed over peacefully the reign of power when the time came. Mm-hmm. And whatever happened after that, the accusations flying here and there that he's funding Azimio demonstrations and all this kind of a thing, is something not verifiable to the ordinary man in the streets, of course. But the government is saying that the president is involved. And we can't sustain that from where we sit. Mm-hmm. It is the government and its intelligence apparatus that knows best. But the fact is that maybe there could be reasons for the government doing one thing or another. The point is that it's having supported his preferred presidential candidate, mm-hmm, as Azimio candidate, and on the other side, accusations flying that the former president is involved in one way or another. Mm-hmm. I think it's a continuation of the bad blood, political bad blood that we witnessed the last 5 years, mm-hmm, between President Ruto and the former president. Mm-hmm. It could as well be a fact that we can ascertain, of course, that the president the former president may be involved. We don't know. From where I sit, I cannot ascertain that.
All right.
But the fact that the accusations here and there flying, and there could be some reasons for the government in place to doubt. All
right. So, Dr. Mugesa, as we wind up, your closing sentiments, a statement rather, in terms of Kenyans would want to document, maybe they have evidence, and what would you like to tell them as a Human Rights Commission?
I would like to call on Kenyans who have evidence to share, with the Commission as we are documenting those Kenyans who lost their lives, those who were injured during the maandamano, so that they can access, justice. Mm-hmm. And as a commission, based on our, statute, we pick up such matters and ensure access, to justice for the Kenyans. Probably the other point I would like to mention as I wind up is that we observed a serious breach on the Constitution with regards to production, mm-hmm, of, suspected, individuals to the courts of law within 24 hours. And we noted that many of them were produced, outside this framework, which is again a violation, mm-hmm, of the Constitution itself. Right. So we call on the Kenyans with information. They can share this with us, through our website. Mm-hmm. It is quite accessible, www.knchr.org, mm-hmm, as we, piece together evidence to make sure that we stand with the Kenyans. So that they can access justice.
All right. We are winding up. I don't know, Karen, if you can just give me a minute, a director, just a minute. I'll not surpass that minute because I need to pick up the mind of Senator Kiarie. Not Kiarie, sorry. Wow, Kiarie is my producer. Senator Manzo. Thank you. Kiarie is our producer. Senator Manzo. I mean, it's sort of like coming out to be like kamata towards the weekend of the opposition politicians.
Yes, and that is politicized, the police force. But I want to say that in Makueni, there was a young man shot dead in Emali. He was just joining university in September. There was another young man shot dead in Watertown. Really, we know the officer who shot the one in Emali. We know the officer who shot the one in Makueni was even a prisons officer. And two other people from Makueni died in Mulolongo, so we have a total of 4. I really want to condole with those families and want to say that, just as the commissioner said, we have a lot of documented evidence, thanks to the phones, and the people there have collected the bullets.
But my question is the sort of arrests that are being made.
They are politically instigated, they are unfair, and not only those arrests, withdrawal of private of security is very intimidating, and it means unless you have anticipatory bail, then you are going to be held in Communicado, you are going to be held on Friday till you are produced on Monday, then on Monday. In fact, unfortunately, and the Kenyans must know this, without a DPP, you cannot prosecute anybody right now. So we need a DPP in place. The provision in the Constitution finds it that it is only the DPP personally who gives permission to prosecute. The others do on behalf, and right now they cannot sign for. So any prosecutions going on are now unconstitutional.
So you're questioning them.
Yes, they're questioning.
All right. Thank you so much. Senator for Makueni Dan Manzo, Dr. Bernard Mogesa, the CEO of the Kenyan National Commission on Human Rights.